Something uncomfortable is happening in organizations right now. UX teams are being quietly reassessed. AI has disrupted the field, leadership expectations have gone unmet, and there's a growing sense that UX hasn't delivered what it promised. The conversations are happening, but often not with the people who actually do UX work. If you're in a UX role, decisions about your team's future might be forming in rooms you're not in. That's the situation I've been thinking about lately, and it's why I want to talk about UX maturity audits. Not as a defensive measure or a tick box exercise, but as a genuinely useful tool for getting ahead of a conversation that's already underway. A lot of the cynicism toward UX right now traces back to one thing: overselling. Leadership was told UX would deliver a hundredfold return on every dollar spent. That figure gets thrown around a lot, and someone took it seriously enough to hire one UX person and wait for the magic to happen. It didn't. That disappointment is partly our industry's fault, though it's not something we often admit openly. We've marketed UX with promises that assume a level of organizational change nobody warned leadership they'd have to make. Hiring one person doesn't transform an organization into a user-centric one. It never did. There's a certain naivety in the idea that a single hire will magically produce amazing experiences without understanding the breadth of change required for an organization to truly become user-focused. But plenty of people implied it would. The result is a leadership team that feels, not unreasonably, like they were sold something that didn't arrive. The natural response to this situation is to keep your head down and hope things settle. Understandable, but a mistake. If leadership is already souring on UX, the absence of any structured conversation about what UX is actually delivering gives that skepticism room to grow unchallenged. Decisions start getting made quietly and without much input from the people who understand what's actually happening. A proactive UX maturity audit changes that dynamic. Instead of waiting to be judged, you're shaping the conversation. You're the one bringing evidence, framing the questions, and defining what success looks like. That's a considerably better position to be in. And it's not just damage control. Even mature, well-functioning UX teams benefit from this kind of review. There's always a next stage. Whether it's wider adoption, better integration with product teams, or moving towards something more democratized, an audit helps you see where you are and decide where to go. A UX maturity audit should cover 5 areas, not exhaustively, but enough to give you a real picture. First, strategy and leadership. Does UX have a seat at the table? Is there genuine sponsorship from someone with budget and influence, or is UX being practiced in a corner while real decisions happen elsewhere? Second, culture and capability. How widely does the organization understand what UX actually involves? Are there training pathways and career development, or is it just a job title a few people happen to have? Third, research and design processes. Is UX practice consistent, or does it depend entirely on who's available? Are designers and researchers involved early or called in after the big decisions are already made? Fourth, outcomes and measurement. Can the team point to specific improvements in user outcomes? Are there agreed definitions of what success looks like, and is anyone actually tracking it? And fifth, cross-functional integration. Is UX embedded across teams or sitting in its own silo waiting for people to come to it? None of these are particularly complicated questions. The hard part is being honest about the answers. An audit that just collects opinions tells you what people think, which is interesting but not necessarily accurate. A good audit looks for evidence. That means checking whether research plans actually exist, whether findings get used or disappear into a folder, whether design systems are maintained or quietly falling apart, and whether the team can point to specific recent changes that improved user outcomes rather than just shipped features. But the more revealing question is often why these things aren't happening, because the answer usually points straight to the organizational problems that stop UX from gaining traction in the first place. A missing research plan isn't just an admin gap. It's often a signal that no one with authority has made space for it, or that the team has learnt it wouldn't be taken seriously anyway. The questions worth asking aren't simply how good is our UX, how well is UX supported here, how consistently is it practiced, and what would move us forward. This shifts the audit from a performance review to a diagnostic tool. Diagnostics are much easier to have productive conversations about. It's worth being honest about one thing before you dive in. This isn't something you can do half-heartedly. A UX maturity audit that gets treated as a side project or squeezed into the gaps between real work tends to produce polite summaries that nobody acts on. It needs management buy-in from the outset, not as an afterthought once the findings are ready. There's also a strong argument for bringing in someone external to run it, not because your internal team lacks the ability, but because independence matters here. People will say different things to an outsider, and an external reviewer is less likely to be seen as someone with a stake in the outcome, which means their conclusions carry more weight when they land on a senior leader's desk. The right person for this isn't someone who will sit in judgment of the UX team's output. The question isn't whether the work is good. The question is whether the organization has created the conditions for good work to be possible. That's a different kind of assessment, and it requires someone who understands enough about how UX actually functions to read the environment accurately rather than just counting deliverables. Given where things are right now, that feels like a fairly important prerequisite.